Hello, happy people. I hope that you are having just one of your favorite days you've ever had in your entire life today. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into this Lord Dunsany collection I have from Penguin Classics. I purchased it probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, with the idea that eventually, at some point in time, I would read it. I just finished the George MacDonald one. George MacDonald has a lot of dreams, a lot of fairy stories. He's pre-Tolkienian fantasy, and I can see some of his influence in Lord Dunsany. So that said, hey, maybe this is time for me to head down and do some Lord Dunsany stuff. So we're taking a look at the first short story that I read in this collection called The Fall of Babbulkund. Now, The Fall of Babbulkund isn't the longest short story in the world. It barely cracks double digits, so it won't take too much of your time to read. I'll link you to both this collection, and I'll also try to find it up for you for free. I think most of his, if not all of, Lord Dunsany's stuff has passed itself by date. Now, Lord Dunsany, for those of you who may not remember, or it's been a while since I've done a Lord Dunsany piece, he was an Irish nobleman who wrote in his spare time. He was also a chess master, a hunter, an adventurer. He did a lot of different things and was well known during his time. He's very influential on people's writings, from H.P. Lovecraft to C.L. Moore, and people. Those are people that during his day, and Clark Ashton Smith, to later people like Lynn Carter, and lots of folks, particularly in the fantasy genre, where much of his really influential stuff is written. A lot of his stuff is in a sort of a dream world setting where you get to it by dreaming. And although not this story seems like it's more set in the real world. It refers to Araby, it refers to China, Cathay. And so it definitely seems to be set in the real world rather than a dream world. But it has some light fantasy evocations to it, and I think you'll enjoy it. Now, this story, in my opinion, starts out a little on the slow side, but it picks up in the middle sections a lot of description about the city, and then at the end, in the last 2 or 3 pages, I think it really ends strongly. And I'd rather have a story end strongly and begin weakly than begin strongly and end weakly, right? I mean, we can all think of examples where we were let down by something's ending, but I thought this ending was particularly strong, particularly great, and I started to get really interested in this story about 3 or 4 pages left in this short story. And so I think that is to the credit of the author there. I think this is probably like a 7.5, 7.3, 7.7, somewhere in there. I'll round it up to an 8, but it's more of a 7.5 than a true 8 proper because of its slow start. Now what's going to wind up happening? We're set in a desert, and a desert traveler, has just been greeted and welcomed and hospitalitied by other journeyers. And this idea that all the desert travelers are one family, so let's talk together, break together, eat together, right, and talk about our journeys, right? And this person says that they're going to tell us about the fall of Babbulkund, and then they start off by telling us about Babbulkund. So we're going to find out more about the city and what happened to the city, and that's sort of your setup. Now, the setup is probably longer than it should be. That's where I think the story is at its weakness, right? I think you could have probably done it in just a couple of paragraphs and been fine. But then the story proper is going to pick up. We're going to have a lot of description about Babbulkund and the people that live there and its vendors, the gem vendors, and it's a lot of information about its ruler and who his ruler interacts with, and a lot of that sort of thing. And then we'll move to the actual proper fall of Babbulkund. So that kind of divides the short story then into 3 parts. The beginning preamble of here's the people gathering in the desert to tell the story. The description of the city, and then the fall of the city proper in the last few pages. And again, the fall part of the last few pages where it started to happen, I thought was particularly interesting to me. After finishing the story, it feels like there's a biblical aspect to it, like an Old Testament biblical aspect to it, and like a Jonah or a Jonah or a Jonah. And so in particular, Jonah came to mind when I was reading. I'm like, huh, I wonder if that's what he was going for. A lot of his classic work, particularly in the Pagana universe, like the Gods of Pagana, has an Old English feel to it, because what he's doing is he's establishing mythology, right? And so he has these and thous and hence and that sort of language, sort of an Old English language that he uses, that's from, you know, the King James Bible sort of style and vernacular, with the idea of, you know, making his myth feel very much like a biblical myth, right? And written in the same sort of language. And this, I think, also has, in a different way, because it's not the language, has a feel of a sort of a biblical prophet of old, from Israel. Sort of a pre-Christian God, the God of anger, the God of justice, the God who is pissed off because you have not followed him. And so it feels like an Old Testament version of God, and I thought that it was really nice and very nicely done. And I had that sort of parallel with, you know, Jonah and other prophets like Jonah. Anyway, be that as it may, I'll leave you to it. But if you've read it, I'd be very interested if you saw that biblical parallel as well. And I would be very happy to talk with you further. But that's it. That's the short story. Again, I'm giving it you know, an 8 out of 10. A little bit less actually, but you know, I'm rounding up to an 8 out of 10. It's a very strong ending. Loved it for the last few pages. And that's the Fall of Babbulkund. Have you read it? What did you think of it? Did you agree or disagree with my take? I would be more than happy to engage you with it further, whatever your comments are on it and whatever you thought about it. If you like this video, why not hit that subscribe button? Because there's going to be a lot more of these if I like fantasy, this one, science fiction, and horror. And then finally, hey, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, right? And we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.